Those drums were roads. And I mean those brothers and sisters were going forth in song. And it was just powerful. And I mean to see some of those elders that were there, that were dancing, praising God and dance, was an absolutely powerful thing. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Colonel, for this Shabbat and for each of you. Indeed, His goodness and His mercy endures forever. And I have to tell you, I am so delighted and blessed. I don't know if it's still snowing outside. You know how bad I used to be. I was so bad when I came into the house of Israel in 1970 and 71 that I used to pray that my Christian brother didn't have snow for Christmas. Yeah. that was just crazy, you know. And don't give him no snow, you know. Well, why not? It's like that. And there's somebody snow on the side of the city where they stay. I don't need it on the side of the city that I stay. But I'd like to turn over this Shabbat to each of you. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the experience that we had at the Usabo Museum for the Amistad project that is only moving forward in 3 states: New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. And many of you know Amistad was the ship, and those brothers who took over the ship, and they were trying to sail back to Africa. The ship was captured and brought to these shores. They actually went to court in the United States seeking their freedom, proving that they indeed were stolen. So it was a powerful film that we saw that surrounded the spirituality and the place of African spirituality in Western religious thought today. And it was a very powerful program. We had a doctor of religion history from the Chicago Theological Seminary. We had a Baba, Yoruba priest who was there. We had a Nigerian professor of history and religion being there, and myself as a part of the panel. And the moderator for the panel was a beautiful young woman from Trinity United Church of Christ. She's working on her doctorate degree in theology, also at the Chicago Theological Seminary. And it's interesting, she was hired by Trinity Church not 2 weeks. I said, when did you start working at Trinity? She said in 2008. So that meant that what they did, when Reverend Jeremiah Wright made this statement, he said that the God that the Africans in the belly of the ship were praying to, he doubted that that was the same God that their captors were praying to. Couldn't be. Because if we're praying the same, praising the same God and serving the same God, how can you enslave him? It's an impossibility. It's an impossibility. What role African esoteric traditions has played in developing Judaism, Islam, Christianity. Unfortunately, there should have been someone from the Muslim community to speak to that subject matter. For indeed, it does. It does, in fact, African spirituality has influenced it all. And as one of the young women mentioned, today is the anniversary of the massacre in Newtown. And we're going to hear from Rabbi Yochanan. And I have a little short piece that I'm going to read to you from one of my colleagues, Rabbi Yakil Kupko, who wrote something on the Newtown massacre and violence that I thought was very nice. It's kind of related to today's Torah portion as well. And I want to share that with you. But at this time, please stand and let us receive our beloved brother in the presence of Rabbi Vayechi ben Yehuda ben Israel. Praise Elohim! Praise Elohim! Praise Elohim! Praise Elohim! Praise Elohim! Hallelujah! Wow! You may be seated. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out on this snowy Shabbat. I'd like to thank our guests. And I want to say thank you to the Creator of heaven and earth. The God who made the heavens like a curtain, who brought the sun to shine upon us. May his glory be seen every day. Amen. Sometimes when you think that all is lost, then comes the God I serve, the power of the universe, the God of Abraham, the God of his God, the God of Yaakov, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel. Let us all say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. You know, this portion today, Genesis 47, 28, 50, and 26, it speaks about the life of Yaakov. But I want to say this. The book of Vayechi, the book of Vayechi, we have 54 Parshah. We've done 12 Sidras within this book of Genesis. And in Genesis, that 12 equates to what? 3. Out of that whole book, it equates to 3. And when it equates to 3, it talks about who? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Amen. Amen. See, sometimes we don't think about how the Creator has put things together. And our sages, maybe they saw it, maybe they didn't see it. But I saw it in order to relate it to us. Jacob, our father, he had a real struggle in his life. As we look and we see that the struggle went on. He struggled when he was in his mother's womb. He struggled. He struggled with his brother after he came out of the womb. He struggled in his life. As I said once before, he had 4 wives. That's a struggle in itself. That's a struggle in itself. For me, 1 is good. I don't know about the rest of it. I know 1 is good. Okay, 1 is great. Because if I could just do that. But 4, and he had 12 sons, and then he had some sons who were very jealous of Joseph. We see throughout the book of the creation, when we look at the book of creation, we don't think about it, but it talks about our history, us as a people, how things came into fruition, how from the beginning it gave us the 7th day. That's the day that we sit and praise the Creator. Then it talks about Noah, how when the Creator created man, he wanted man to do one thing, but man decided to do something else. Then we see that after the flood of Noah, we had Nimrod. All of this is in the book of Vayechi, the book of creation. And from Nimrod, that generation came Abraham. He left Ur of Kasdim and crossed over. And once he crossed over, he freed us as a people. Was born. You see, he struggled as well, but his struggle was not the same struggle of Yitzchak or Yaakov. We see that Yaakov, he lived 147 years.
7 years, he struggled 130 of those years. Some of us have seen our family members die before they reach 7. You know, our father promised us 70, which is 70 years. He is a man who lived 147 years. That's a little while. We should want to at least get to that age. Us as a people, we have to continue on. But the last 17 years of Yaakov's life, where was it? Egypt. And the sages said in the Midrash that he lived his last 17 years in peace. Right? And that was a peaceful time for Yaakov. He didn't struggle. Because once he lost his son, Joseph, when we lose a child, I don't know how it is, but I know when I lost my father, it was something. It was very, very painful. It took a little while. So this man was living with the pain of not only losing his beloved wife, he lost one of his beloved sons. And when his son came back, and they said, "We have found Joseph." How do you think his heart felt? The joy, the peace. And today I want to talk about the struggles, not only of Yaakov, but look at the struggles of Israel. And how in these last few days of his life, there was no struggle. None. We see that he told his son as he was about to die, he said, "Put your hand under my thigh and swear to me that you will not bury me in Egypt." Why? Why would he say that? Only because he wanted to be buried with his forefathers. He wanted to be buried with his father and let the children of Israel come home. That Egypt is not home for them. Wanted them to realize that this is not my home. The land of Canaan is the place of my nativity. Joseph swore to him. And as Joseph swore to him, he wanted his sons to be blessed by his grandfather. When Rabbi spoke earlier, some of us had the opportunity to see our grandmothers and our grandfathers. I only saw my grandmothers. I didn't see my grandfathers. But here, at this day and time, this man lived 140 years. He saw his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, and possibly his great-great-grandchildren. We should be so blessed that we can do such a thing, to see our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Because today, we are consumed with cancer and other diseases. We should hope that we can live. He told Joseph, because when Joseph saw that he had his hand on Ephraim's head, Joseph said, "No, no, 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 no. Put your hand here on Manasseh." But he said, "No, I know what I'm doing." Why? Because Ephraim would go to see his grandfather. Within those 17 years he lived in Egypt, Ephraim would go and visit his grandfather and sit and talk to his grandfather. His grandfather would tell him all about Israel, all about what he should do as being a righteous man, just as he did with Joseph. Because by the time Joseph got to be 17, he knew what it was all about. And I want to say this. program that we went to last Thursday. It spoke about us being able to understand what our forefathers did. We don't praise them, we acknowledge them. We must always acknowledge our forefathers in everything we do. What is the formula that we use when we pray? I pray in the name of the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. All the time. That is the formula. So we can invoke the blessings of the Most High God. We must always look at our ancient forefathers. He told that he wanted to be buried in Machpelah. When Abraham bought this cave, no one would have known how things would have progressed. I want everyone to look back on the struggles that they've had in their life. Because I've had my struggles. And those struggles made me a stronger individual. Just like the struggles with Yaakov. When he struggled in the house in Laban. When he struggled with his brother. When he came back and he had to move after his son decided that they wanted to kill all these men. Another struggle. Was that a life of ups and downs? Or was that a life just smooth sailing? We see now with the brutality that happened with our people, the struggle of being in the belly of the ship, the Black Holocaust. That was a hard struggle. The struggle that our European brothers struggled with in the time of World War II and the European Holocaust. Now it's time for us to stop struggling. It's time for us to look for the blessings that the Father gave to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's time for us to join our brothers and sisters. Just as they joined us, we must join them. We must forgive and learn what it means to be Bnai Yisrael. And I mean Bnai Yisrael. Before we leave this earth, there are things that we must do. And that is praise the Most High God. That is a Shabbat Shalom.
This little piece I'm going to read was written by Rabbi Funnye, Orthodox rabbi here in Chicago metropolitan area, on this Parshah Vayechi. And I thought it was interesting. In remembrance of the Newtown massacre, it says that Shimon and Levi, that they traffic in corruption and violent tools, referring, of course, to the weapons they used when they attacked the city of Shechem in order to gain their sister's release. This is not a pacifist statement. Indeed, three brothers are given the blessing of might and power in order to defeat their enemies. These three brothers are Judah, where the Torah says, "You, O Judah, your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be at the nape of your foe's neck. Amen. Your father's sons shall bow low to you." Vayechi 49:8. Dan shall be a serpent by the road, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that his rider is thrown backward. Vayechi 49:17. And Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he consumes the foe. In the evening he divides the spoil. Genesis 49:27. Something else is intended for Shimon and Levi. The Midrash describes what Yaakov was telling Shimon and Levi. These weapons which you hold, he said to them, you stole these weapons. And whose weapons are they? Who did you steal them from? For whom weapons really fit. For the one who sold them to you, they're fit for Esau, who sold the birthright and was in turn given the blessing of, and by your sword you shall live. Their weapons are stolen, meaning that they were stolen from the one who sold his birthright. Esau was told that he will live by the sword. The rebuke of Shimon and Levi is not a rebuke in favor of being a pacifist. It is a rebuke for the wrongful use of weapons and the violence that follows from using them. They are criticized by their father on his deathbed and told, "Cursed be their anger, for it is arrogant, and their rage, for it is so remorseless." Shimon and Levi are not fit to yield weapons in the eyes of their father Jacob, because they don't make thoughtful, dispassionate use of physical violence. They bring unbridled rage and anger to the task. When they do that, they are behaving like Esau. Thus, they possess weapons stolen from Esau. This Shabbat, as mentioned on the Gregorian calendar, is the first anniversary of the massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. The message of this deathbed rebuke by Jacob to his children is simply this: yielding weapons and exercising physical violence requires a full control of one's intellect and moral faculties. The eyes of the Midrash. This is what Shimon and Levi lacked when they attacked Shechem. So I'm saying to you, and asking that you understand, that when I gave you that Darash about the 3 times that the word unity is mentioned in the Torah, one of them is in this Parshah, when Jacob says to Simeon and Levi, "Let not my soul be united with them when they go to do violence." My soul was not a part of that violence, because they went beyond simply taking out the man that raped their sister. They went and took out the entire people. Sometimes we must learn to control ourselves. If we can't control ourselves, how in the world are we going to help others to control themselves? Self-restraint. A couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with one of the brothers who, in his particular profession, is licensed to carry a firearm. And that profession, it takes a great deal of restraint. A great deal of restraint. Because you have within your hand's reach the power of life and death over a person. And so that power must be exercised with the greatest caution. Last but not least, these 147 years, when I go around the country and teach about these 17 years that Yaakov spent in Egypt, I always say to the audience, whenever you hear me say Egypt, when I point to you, you say Africa. So that we never lose sight of the fact that the children of Israel, the Jewish people, became a people on the continent of Africa. On the continent of Africa is where they became a people. Joseph and his family were 70 souls when they went into Africa. The Torah is going to tell us next week that when they leave, we're told that there are over 600,000 men, aged 20 and above, not counting women and children. You have to understand something. When historians try to take Africa out of its proper place in the history of all humanity, it does a disservice to everyone. And that disservice is terrible. So I will end with the question that I was asked. The first question that was put to us on Thursday evening. And that question was, what role has the media played in creating in Western religion the idea that African spirituality has no place? They told me to answer first. My answer was this. I just told you about Israel and Egypt, coming out of Egypt. I told you that they received actually the Torah in Egypt. God didn't speak in Germany. He didn't speak in Poland when he gave the Torah. He wasn't in Russia. He was in Africa. However, when I looked at the movie The Ten Commandments, I only saw 4 Africans. And what was their job? Carrying Moses' foster mom and said, can my servants come in? Naturally, Charlton Heston was real nice. There's a place for everybody. Come on in, guys. So the media has projected Jews and the Jewish people in the image of Charlton Heston. And the only place black people could get in was as servants. Y'all wasn't caring. Media has projected that the Jew has a large black hat and a long black coat and black shiny shoes and white stockings. That that's the only definition of what a Jew looks like. It is so wrong. When someone will tell you to take yourself out of the pages of history, I say to you that we do have a place. And that Africa's place and Africa's gifts to all Western culture. Not just Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but her gifts to Greece in the sciences and in the arts, in philosophy, in medicine. She gave those gifts to the world. Here's the other thing that the media does, and I'll sit down. Maybe you're too young to remember the commercial. It says, I'm going home this summer. I'm from Italy, but I'm going to Greece. Remember that commercial? I'm from Germany, but I'm going home. I'm going to Greece. So they have projected that Greek culture and civilization is that culture and civilization that civilized the rest of the world. In my humble opinion, I think you could raise some very intelligent arguments with that, based upon the works of Martin Brunel, based upon the works of Sheikh Anta, based upon the works of the Professor Hansberry, history at Howard University, based upon the works of John Jackson, based upon the works of so many writers that connect what the Greeks got from Africa. One gentleman said, oh, it all came from Egypt. He was supposed to be a professor. So I didn't want to actually teach him that Egypt wasn't anything more than the dirt that the Nile drug down from Ethiopia. That's how Egypt came into existence. So it is important for us to teach. Like grandkids ask us, we were coming in today, well, what's Kwanzaa? What's Kwanzaa? We must teach our children and our grandchildren everything we can. And you have to ask them so that you can see what they may not know that you can help impart to them. Because then Rabbi started explaining those principles that hold people. The principles of Kwanzaa, which are very, very important. So I'm not mad anymore with my Christian brothers and sisters for Xmas. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. I'm indeed happy for them. So that their holiday was nice because we had a beautiful Thanksgiving cup. that synthesized Thanksgiving with Hanukkah, which was absolutely outstanding. And enjoyable and had the opportunity to spend with the family, to enjoy my grandchildren and some of my children. So, to my relatives who celebrate that holiday, I wish them well. What do you say? Peace. Peace. And God give them peace. Shabbat Shalom.